This is a sci-fi masterpiece with a budget of over 30 billion, and features a luxurious cast. From the Korean entertainment industry, the action effects are on par with Hollywood. When ancient cultivators collide with alien civilizations, who will come out on top? Without further ado, let's enjoy this Korean version of RoboCop. It turns out that a long time ago, an advanced alien civilization treated Earth as a prison. They imprisoned criminals from their planets within human bodies. However, humans were completely unaware of this. Whenever the life of the host carrying the prisoner came to an end, they would also vanish along with the body. At this point, the prisoners would attempt to escape. This act was known as a jailbreak. Jing Dong was the guard responsible for monitoring and capturing prisoners. A few days ago, he received news that a prisoner from the year 1380 was planning to escape. He drove the robotic car, Thunder, and time traveled to the ancient incident site. Thunder scanned the floating human figures and found that the imprisoned prisoner had escaped the host. Immediately, he pinpointed the prisoner's location not far ahead. As Jing Dong gradually approached, the prisoner couldn't resist and began to escape. Jing Dong immediately launched an attack. Clearly, he was no match for Jing Dong. He could only retreat back to the host for one last struggle. A tentacle extended from his body. Just as it was about to reach Jing Dong, he extended his palm and released a special energy to absorb the prisoner. The prisoner was successfully captured. Then the divine sword plunged into his thigh. As he prepared to leave, unexpectedly, a baby's cry suddenly came from nearby. The child was the daughter of that human, but according to alien regulations, they couldn't interfere in human affairs. So, they drove back to the time of 2012. Up until now, Jing Dong had dealt with 7 jailbreak incidents across time. As he placed the prisoner's heart into the energy box, the familiar crying sound echoed again. It turned out that Thunder couldn't bear to let her perish. He had secretly brought the baby back. At this point, Jing Dong had nothing more to say. He could only take the child back inside for now. Then, according to the information provided by Thunder, the next ship to search for rhyming prisoners was expected to arrive in 10 years and 8 months. Without receiving a recall message from the planetary headquarters, Jing Dong could only temporarily stay on Earth. He also took the child as his adopted daughter and named her Jishio. Soon, 10 years passed. Jing Dong was called to the school by Jishio's teacher. The school received a video sent by the police station. According to the footage from the police station, Jishio reported to the police that Jing Dong wasn't her father, and suspected that he was a bionic robot. The teacher clearly didn't believe anything Jishio expressed, and only hoped that Jing Dong would care more about Jishio. On the way home, Jishio stuffed her phone into the gap of the car seat, and turned on the call recording. After getting off the car, she overheard Jing Dong talking to Thunder. The conversation was about how in 18 hours, an alien ship would transport prisoners to Earth, and these prisoners would be imprisoned within humans. However, the specific location still needed further searching. Everything she heard on the call made Jishio curious. So that night, when Jing Dong wasn't home, she sneaked to the car to retrieve the recording phone. This way, she could prove her words to the police. Unexpectedly, she discovered a completely different scene. The car's armrest box opened automatically, revealing what appeared to be an alien world inside. Just as Jishio was about to reach out to touch it, she was suddenly stopped by a familiar voice. It was Thunder who had suddenly appeared. However, Jishio wasn't surprised by his appearance, because when she was a child, Thunder had wanted to study humans, and had stimulated Jishio's brain, possibly explaining why Jishio's memory was beyond that of an average person. She remembered Thunder speaking to her as a child. Jishio was extremely curious about the identities of Jing Dong and Thunder. Immediately afterward, Thunder magically transformed into Jing Dong's appearance, explaining the backgrounds of the two to Jishio. Just as they were having a pleasant conversation, Jishio asked about the prisoner transport location. It was at a hospital called Jishan in the city. So, the next day, Jishio turned on her phone's recording function and entered the hospital. She wanted to capture the process of the alien prisoners parasitizing humans. Little did she know that the next scene would terrify her. Soon after, the sky showed strange signs. The ship transporting the prisoners had arrived above the hospital. Jing Dong received the news and rushed to the hospital. After everything was prepared, the ship opened its hatch and threw a metal stone into the hospital. The stone then began to enlarge and transform into a golden crystal. A passing doctor was stunned by the scene before her. Driven by curiosity, she approached to take a look, but in the next second, the glowing fragments within the crystal transformed into sharp tentacles. The frightened doctor turned to run, but she couldn't escape in time. Humans struck by the tentacles in the neck quickly bowed their heads and lost consciousness. The tentacles seemed to have predetermined targets. Even if they hid in cabinets, they would be precisely hit. Countless tentacles spread throughout the hall. Jishio was stunned by this scene. Everyone present wasn't spared. All were attacked by the tentacles, except for herself. Jishio hid in a corner, preparing to escape at the right moment. Unexpectedly, just as she started to move, she bumped into a patient. At this moment, Jingdong arrived at the hospital and saw Jishio sitting on the floor. He asked her why she was there. At this moment, Jishio saw her father. Her eyes were filled with fear. She turned and ran away. Immediately after, all the tentacles retracted back into the crystal. The crystal also transformed back into the metal stone. Everyone returned to normal. They were completely unaware of what had just happened. It turned out that the process of the tentacles attacking humans was the way the alien prisoners were imprisoned. The prisoners were imprisoned in the human brain through tentacles, sharing life and death with humans. Once the confinement was complete, this segment of human memory would also be erased. After leaving the hospital, Jishio didn't go home, but went to her friend Minshan's house. She shared the video she recorded with Minshan. In a child's world, there was only curiosity, completely unaware of what this meant for humanity. At this moment, Jingdong also drove to Minshan's house. He knew that Minshan's aunt had a good impression of him, so he had Thunder transform into his appearance to bring Jishio out. After getting home, Jishio questioned Jingdong about what he had injected into humanity. Seeing that it couldn't be hidden any longer, Jingdong could only have Thunder reveal everything. He also informed Jishio about her origins. After hearing this, Jishio didn't feel panic, but angrily accused Jingdong of making decisions without human consent. But when she learned that Jingdong's identity was to capture fugitives attempting to escape and protect humanity, Jishio felt guilty about her actions. By evening, she tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep due to the day's events. Jishio decided to go to the car to confide in Thunder. Under Thunder's comfort, she quickly fell into a peaceful sleep. However, the next day, an unidentified alien ship was approaching Earth. Moreover, Thunder's system was inexplicably being controlled. The car suddenly lost control and began to rampage. Fortunately, Jingdong noticed in time and fixed the program. According to the information detected by Thunder, a human named On was searching for the list of humans who had imprisoned prisoners in the hospital last time. He was a police officer, but what he didn't know was that at this moment, he was harboring a special prisoner within him. Just moments ago, On was suddenly compelled by a mysterious force and accidentally killed 2 colleagues. When he came to his senses, he realized he had become a murderer. Even more bizarrely, an alien ship arrived on Earth and headed for the police station, and deployed a red mech to capture Owen. Seeing such a strange creature, Owen was frightened and hid in the elevator. Meanwhile, Jingdong received the news and rushed to the police station. Then he calmly transformed into a black mech, and flew towards the elevator where Owen was. At this moment, the red mech had already caught up with Owen, and forcibly pried open the elevator. Owen fired dozens of shots at the mech, but the damage index was 0%. Even his handgun was disassembled. What On didn't know was that he was harboring a prisoner, named the Designer within him, who was the leader of all prisoners. At the moment of crisis, Jingdong arrived just in time, and engaged in a struggle with him. On slumped in the elevator and was stunned. Jingdong took out the divine sword again, and plunged it into the red mech's body. Unexpectedly, the red mech suddenly exerted its strength, and kicked Jingdong into the elevator shaft. Immediately after, it controlled Jingdong again, and used its tentacles to reach into his thigh, to steal the divine sword. The mission had been accomplished on this side. The red mech mercilessly fired lasers again, and Jingdong was shot down to the bottom of the elevator. The red mech then piloted the ship, and raced towards On, who was trying to escape. At this moment, On was driving wildly. He realized that the ship was coming for him, so On sharply turned the steering wheel, and entered the underground parking garage, thinking he had escaped a disaster. Little did he expect a strange sound echoed in the car. It turned out that the red mech's goal was to rescue all prisoners and take over Earth. Just as On felt confused, not knowing what the other side was saying, the red mech ship broke through the underground garage, and drove right in. On's jaw nearly dropped in shock. He immediately stepped on the gas, and drove out of the parking garage. Right after, Thunder transformed into a ship, and carried Jingdong to chase after it. They opened fire on the red mech ship ahead. Although the red mech was shot down, this didn't cause it much harm. Instead, it successfully angered the mech. The red mech began to turn around and retaliate. According to the information provided by Thunder, each ship has a heart located in the center. As long as it can be precisely hit, the ship will cease to function. To prevent harm to the humans on the ground, Jingdong led the red mech out of the city, and then flew towards the sky. He planned to strike directly at its heart to bring it down, but what he didn't expect was that the red mech's heart could actually move. This strike didn't hit the target, but was instead hit by the laser emitted by the red armor, and fell into the sea. After dealing with Jingdong, the red mech set off again to pursue On. It fired lasers to destroy the vehicles around On, to block his path ahead. On was unable to dodge in time, and collided with an oncoming car, actually flying out of the car and crashing into a bus ahead. At this moment, the red mech took out the divine sword to stab On. However, Jingdong interrupted its plan. It turned out that the divine sword could awaken prisoners, and release the designer within On. If the jailbreak succeeded, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, during the melee between both sides, the red mech threw the divine sword, and then pierced through the bus, aiming for On's body. Jingdong tried to pull out the sword to stop it, but was thrown aside by the red mech's tentacles. The red mech, worried that Jingdong would disrupt its plan, activated its self-destruction program, to perish together with him. Thunder detected that Jingdong was on the edge of danger, and provided assistance to him. Meanwhile, the designer had successfully broken free. He approached the red mech ship with the divine sword. With just a wave of his hand, he opened the door. It turned out that this ship contained a large amount of alien air. As long as the carrier holding the air was detonated, the prisoners confined within human bodies would be released, and Earth and humanity would cease to exist. Thunder realized the severity of the situation, and immediately reported the news to Jingdong. However, Jingdong, who had just escaped a disaster, wasn't a match for the designer at this moment. He used all his strength to fire a laser cannon, and shot it out of the ship. Then he began to use the divine sword to turn off the carrier switch, but two were still able to escape the ship. The designer outside, having detached from humanity, couldn't remain in contact with Earth's air for long, so he could only seek a new host. At this moment, he targeted Jishio, who was hiding in the corner. In a moment of crisis, Thunder rushed out of the ship in time to repel the designer. He could only dive back into On's body to escape. Immediately after, he noticed the floating carrier in the air and detonated it. As the red gas spread, those who inhaled it slowly suffocated and lost consciousness. At this moment, the streets were in chaos. Everyone was running frantically to avoid the gas. To ensure that people could escape safely, Thunder pushed the cart to clear the way for them. At this moment, Jishio suddenly saw someone trapped inside a car, so she opened the car door to rescue them. Little did she expect that within seconds, the red gas had already reached above her head. Fortunately, Thunder quickly closed Jishio inside the car, and activated the autopilot to take her home. Inside the ship, Jingdong exerted all his strength to close the carrier switch. However, what he didn't know was that two prisoners outside had been awakened, and successfully made contact. Zishio, who had returned home, saw the survivors being reported in the news. The two had fierce glares, which made Jishio realize they were no longer human. At this moment, Jingdong also rushed back home. He guessed that the designer would come with prisoners. For Jishio's safety, Jingdong decided to make her leave this home, so he intentionally told Jishio that her mother was killed by him. The reason he raised her was to hide his alien identity, but now Jishio was hindering him, so he had to force her out. These words plunged Jishio into deep sorrow. She asked Jingdong to send her back to her original timeline. In fact, she knew everything. Jingdong did this only to protect her, so she couldn't cause trouble at this critical moment. Jishio quickly packed her things, and handed the photo of the two of them to Jingdong. The heartfelt words on the back of the photo comforted Jingdong. However, at this moment, Jingdong's life was down to 9%. It was impossible to win in battle. But as a defender who captures prisoners and protects humanity, even if he dies in battle, he will never escape. Meanwhile, the designer had arrived at Jingdong's home. A ship hovered above the house. They walked in to find Jingdong lying in ambush. With the laser fired from the designer's hand, Jingdong was knocked to the ground. On the other side, Jishio had followed Thunder and was already halfway there. But upon learning that Jingdong had only a 1% chance of winning, Jishio ordered Thunder to turn back, regardless of whether Jingdong was her biological father or not. After 10 years of being together, they had already become true family. Thunder was moved by this emotion, and he turned the car around. Thunder prepared to return to fight the designer alongside Jingdong. Just as the designer was about to detonate the carrier, Jingdong received a message from Thunder. As long as the divine sword was plunged into the ship's heart, the ship would stop functioning, and the carrier within wouldn't be released. Just as Thunder took the divine sword and charged towards the heart, the prisoners suddenly fired lasers, knocking him down. Ding Dong was also thrown out of the ship by the designer. At this moment, Jishio came up with a plan. She told Ding Dong that as long as they lured the designer to ancient times, they could then return and trap him in another timeline. However, the divine sword capable of time travel was also knocked to the ground by the prisoners. Jishio saw the divine sword in the distance and dashed over, wanting to pick it up, but the designer on the roof happened to see the scene and began to attack Jishio. Fortunately, Thunder appeared just in time to help Jishio escape. Jishio grabbed the divine sword and returned to the car. Ding Dong drove the car to lure the three prisoners to cross over. The prisoners saw the speeding car and thought Ding Dong was going to stop another carrier from exploding, so they chased closely behind him. They crossed over to the year 1381 in Goryeo, but this scene was witnessed by the ancient county magistrate and his son, along with two Taoist priests. They immediately rode horses and planned to investigate. On the other side, the car was struck and fell into the valley. The prisoners were thrown far away. Ding Dong called for Thunder, preparing to return to the modern era together, but due to the severe impact, Thunder lost power and couldn't initiate its program. At this moment, the designer suddenly regained consciousness. He realized Ding Dong and the others' conspiracy. The designer rushed forward, wanting to kill him. Ding Dong fought against Jishio with his life to protect her, but before he could make a move, he was controlled by the tentacles extended by the designer. Ding Dong struggled with all his might but couldn't break free. Even his arm was torn off. After successfully defeating Ding Dong, the designer began to walk towards Jishio. Unexpectedly, Jishio suddenly pulled out a handgun and opened fire at him, but the two bullets didn't kill him. Instead, they enraged him. The tentacles attacked once more and directly pushed Jishio and the car into the river. However, due to severe injuries, On's body was unable to provide a living environment for the designer, so he had to set out to search for a new host. Jishio escaped from the car in the water. She wanted to grab the divine sword floating in the water, but unable to breathe, she eventually lost consciousness. Fortunately, Kevin, the county magistrate's son, passed by. He discovered the unconscious Jishio by the riverbank. Kevin learned that she had lost something important and jumped into the water to help her search. But Kevin only found Jishio's abandoned backpack. 10 years later, Kevin had grown up. He had become a boastful Taoist priest and often captured wanted criminals for the authorities in exchange for high rewards. One day, he showed off his Taoist skills in front of the villagers and claimed that his abilities were profound. Little did he expect that a curious old lady nearby stabbed a knife into Kevin's thigh. At this moment, the nearby villagers encountered the trouble of thieves and heard that there was a Taoist with advanced magic skills here, which made them very excited. When Kevin learned that the thief was the fugitive he was pursuing, he immediately got up to chase after him. Soon, Kevin discovered the thieves in a nearby temple. After he sent them to the jail, he found that the authorities had posted a new wanted notice. When he saw the divine sword illustrated on it, memories from his childhood suddenly flashed in his mind. Through the description provided by the officials, he learned that the recently captured thief Hunter had seen the divine sword, so he disguised himself as Hunter's son and went to the jail. Taking advantage of the sob story, he stole the key. After deceiving the jailer, Kevin used the key to get Hunter to reveal the whereabouts of the divine sword. It turned out that not long ago, the divine sword had been found by two villagers while fishing. When they saw the gems embedded in the sword, they wanted to take it to the blacksmith to exchange for money. However, the sword was exceptionally sturdy, and when the blacksmith exerted force, he was accidentally knocked back. A nearby cripple couldn't dodge in time and was pierced in the chest by the sword. To his surprise, his crippled leg miraculously returned to normal. Now, the divine sword had been purchased by the county magistrate at that time. After learning the whereabouts of the divine sword, Kevin immediately rushed to the inn run by the county magistrate to search for it. But unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the inn, the magistrate gave him a show of authority. Meanwhile, a man in a black suit approached the magistrate and claimed that the divine sword originally belonged to him. It turned out that he was one of the prisoners from 10 years ago. Suddenly, a tentacle shot through the room and threw the magistrate out. The divine sword somehow plunged into his chest. He pulled out his divine sword in pain and threw it out of the window, only to be picked up by Hunter, who had escaped from the prison. When Kevin arrived, the magistrate, in his dying moments, told him not to meddle in affairs. Then he took his last breath. Kevin immediately chased after the wanted man in a suit on the ground. At this moment, the man in the black suit was chasing Hunter into a village. Kevin took a shortcut and arrived just in time. Before the man in the black suit could strike, he knocked him away. Little did he know that just as Hunter was about to hand over the divine sword, Kevin was thrown to the ground by the tentacles of the man in the black suit. After solving Kevin's problem, the man in the suit set out again to pursue the fleeing Hunter. However, Kevin was resilient, and he managed to take a shortcut to catch up again. After several rounds of fighting, Kevin gradually fell at a disadvantage. The man in the suit pinned him against the wall and beat him brutally. Soon, he was beaten unconscious. Until nightfall, Kevin's two subordinates finally found him. These two people, named David and Ian, were transformed from two cats kept in Kevin's van. They usually acted together with Kevin, but what puzzled the three was that the wall behind Kevin was shattered, yet he had not suffered a scratch. At this moment, they discovered through the hole in the wall that the water nearby was glowing red. The three decided to go over to investigate. As they approached, they found that it was actually a ship in the river. However, they had no idea of its origins, and merely regarded it as a glowing stone. Suddenly, David heard a noise nearby, and threw his torch to take a closer look. He discovered a girl in red fleeing the scene. In fact, the girl was the grown-up Jishio. For 10 years, she had been searching for the divine sword, in order to awaken the dormant Gingdong and Thunder. On the other side, in the magistrate's inn, the two Taoists Heist and Qingyun, who witnessed the crossing, learned that the county magistrate's magic sword was taken away, and came to investigate. Based on their observations of the scene, the two deduced that a monster must have killed the magistrate, so they went to the temple, where monsters had previously appeared. To find the temple master, they pretended to approach him, under the guise of selling talismans. Then they revealed information about the divine sword. The temple master was extremely interested in the matter of the divine sword. It turned out that after Hunter took the divine sword, he sold it to the Chui family in the northern village. The Chui family intended to use the divine sword as their daughter's dowry. After learning the whereabouts of the divine sword, the temple master offered to help the two find the divine sword. Unexpectedly, the reason the temple master was interested in the divine sword was because he was another alien prisoner. The next day, the Chui family held their wedding as scheduled. However, the groom turned out to be Kevin. By evening, Kevin drank the fine wine handed over by the bride, without any warning. Soon, he felt weak all over. Then he pretended to go to the bathroom, and sneaked into the shrine where the dowry was stored. However, at this moment, Haishan Xingyun led the temple's people to the Chui family. They used their magic to seal off the Chui family. No one could enter or leave. The head of the Chui family heard the commotion, and came out to check, but he was also controlled by Haish and made to submit. At this time, a servant of the Chui family unexpectedly found the bound young lady in the woodshed. It turned out that Jishio had kidnapped the bride, in order to find the divine sword. At this moment, Kevin didn't know that the one marrying him was the girl he had saved 10 years ago. Hearing the noise outside, Jishio loaded the handgun she had brought, and rushed it out to solve the guards. The temple's people heard the commotion and rushed to assist, but they were all easily dealt with by Jishio. Next, she found the servant who went to retrieve the divine sword, and successfully took it back before it was handed over. Seeing the divine sword being snatched away, Haish and Xingyun wouldn't let it go easily. They immediately took out their cloaks of invisibility for cover, in an attempt to steal the divine sword, while Jishio was off guard. However, as Qingyun appeared and struggled with her, Jishio fired a bullet, hitting Haish, who was watching from behind. Taking advantage of their injuries, she slipped away with the divine sword, but just as Jishio reached the backyard and opened the door, she was knocked unconscious by a flying stick. In the end, the divine sword fell into the hands of the temple master. When Jishio woke up again, she found herself trapped in a barrier. Upon realizing that the other party was an alien prisoner from 10 years ago, Jishio suddenly understood. Although the prisoners had already obtained the divine sword, without the designer's energy and the alien spaceship, they still couldn't return to the modern era. However, ever since the designer went to find a host 10 years ago, he had vanished without a trace. The two prisoners decided to find the designer. To escape from here, they targeted the 4 people who were present at that time. Currently, the magistrate was dead. Haish and Xingyun had not appeared after coming into contact with the divine sword, so only one person remained. On the other side, Kevin and the 2 cat people arrived near the temple. They discussed how to retrieve the divine sword and rescue Jishio. Just then, the masked man from the temple gave them an opportunity. The 3 successfully ambushed and donned the masked man's clothing. They then stealthily entered the temple to wait for the right moment. However, it was unfortunate that the masked man they had knocked out was actually out looking for herbs for Heish and Qingyun. The poisonous mushrooms he brought back needed to be chewed before they could be applied as medicine. The cat people stepped back in fear, but for the bounty on the divine sword, Kevin had to risk his life and stuff the poisonous mushroom into his mouth. Immediately after, the three went to the kitchen to discuss how to steal the divine sword, but at this moment, Kevin was assigned to deliver food to the backyard. Upon arriving, he discovered that the person in the barrier was none other than Jishio, who had drugged him. Kevin vaguely remembered that he had seen the divine sword before, but he couldn't recall that memory no matter what. He used Jishio's handgun as bait to inquire about the origins of the divine sword, but when Jishio said the divine sword came from the future, Kevin thought she was just talking nonsense. The noise attracted the attention of the masked people. Kevin was worried about being discovered. He threw down the handgun and escaped over the wall. By the time the masked people arrived, he found that Jishio showed no signs of distress in the barrier. Just as they turned to leave, Jishio suddenly fainted and lost consciousness. It turned out that the food Kevin had brought was poisoned by the temple master. In order to monopolize the divine sword, the temple master decided to poison Heish and Qingyun. Fortunately, they discovered it in time and didn't fall unconscious. They were simply paralyzed and unable to move. At this moment, Kevin was hanging from the roof trying to steal the divine sword. When the two saw Kevin in the air, they wanted him to help pick up the antidote on the ground. Unexpectedly, the masked people carrying a coffin suddenly appeared. Seeing that Heish and Qingyun were unharmed, and that the divine sword had been stolen, the masked person threw the coffin at Kevin. After defeating the masked person, they informed Kevin that the food was poisoned, and asked Kevin to help pick up the antidote. Only then did Kevin realize that Jishio was also poisoned, because they had all eaten the same food. He picked up an antidote and ran out. Meanwhile, inside the house, Heish and Qingyun used all their strength to get the remaining medicine into their mouths. On the other side, the masked army received the news that the divine sword had been stolen. They immediately rushed to the scene of the incident, but unexpectedly collided with Kevin, who had just run out. Upon meeting, both sides immediately engaged in battle, but the noise was too intense, which alerted the temple master. Just as Kevin was about to go save Jishio with the antidote, the temple master suddenly appeared and knocked him down. Fortunately, the two cat people arrived in time to rescue him, but halfway there, Kevin suddenly stopped. He couldn't bear to let Jishio die like this, so, after transforming Ian back into a cat, he turned back again. Then he took out the antidote and fed it to Jishio. But just as Jishio began to react after taking the antidote, the temple master and the man in the suit suddenly appeared before him at the same time. Kevin's body was instantly pierced by a tentacle. He quickly lost consciousness. After the temple master took the divine sword, he ordered people to nail Kevin inside a coffin and throw it into the river. Then he tossed Jishio into the backyard and buried her with dirt. In a critical moment, Jishio took out her handgun and shot through the coffin. She hit the masked person outside and ran out. At this moment, the temple master was preparing to find the spaceship. With the divine sword in hand, Jishio decisively opened fire on the temple master. The divine sword was dropped to the ground. He picked up the divine sword and quickly fled. They began to chase in the direction Jishio had fled. Fortunately, Heish, who had returned to normal, learned that it was the temple master's poison, and joined Jishio's side. They first used talismans to bind the temple master's body. Then they took out a jar of pickles to seal him away. Meanwhile, the man in the suit, who was chasing Jishio, was hit by several bullets. The prisoner escaped from the host. He locked Jishio's hands with his tentacles, and prepared to use a handgun to defeat her. At the crucial moment, Kevin's fan suddenly awakened with a bloodline-like power, and a sword that had never been seen before flew out. It turned out that after Kevin was thrown into the river, he was awakened by a mysterious force and escaped. He quickly returned to the temple to rescue Jishio. At this time, Kevin had remembered that he had seen Jishio in his childhood. He picked up the sword and grappled with the alien prisoner. Although he had some skills, he was still no match for the red light shot by the prisoner. Jishio knew that to eliminate the alien prisoner, they must get rid of the man in the suit, who was the host. But no matter how Jishio shot her gun, she couldn't break through the suit man's protective shield. At this moment, Heish saw the monster on the roof. He took out a magnifying brass mirror to attack. As Heish prepared to attack again, he was burned on the palm by the prisoner's red light, and thrown away. Just then, Kevin charged out again with the sword. On the other side, Jishio followed Heish's suggestion, and shot the bullet through the magnifying mirror to knock down the man in the black suit. At this moment, the temple master broke through the seal in the pickle jar. A prisoner covered in tentacles charged towards Kevin. In a critical moment, Jishio fired her gun and drew the divine sword to lure him to the river where the spaceship was located, and the prisoner in the suit dissipated into the air due to exceeding the time limit outside the host. But at the last moment, the man in the black suit revealed a horrifying message to Kevin. It turned out that 10 years ago, when the designer was looking for a host, he happened to encounter the isolated Kevin, so he directly parasitized within Kevin's body. However, due to the change of hosts, the designer and Kevin both lost their memories at the same time. The movie ends here, but Jishio has yet to rescue Jingdong and Thunder. Will they be able to return to the modern era smoothly? What will happen to Kevin's fate next? Perhaps more stories will unfold in the second part. Interested viewers can watch the original film Alien Plus People. If you enjoy my channel, please click subscribe.